You've reached Monster 911, and I'm Lance Hightower. I've been taking cryptid emergency calls for over 5 years. If you have a cryptid emergency, please call our toll-free number 866-306-8085. I can help you. What's your emergency? Good evening, folks. Welcome to another Monster 911 show. I'm Lance Hightower, your host, and I'm so glad to be with you once again, bringing you yet another amazing true encounter creature story. And if you've experienced something that you need to tell someone and share what you saw or heard, call me. Call me at 1-866-306-8085, and I can help you. I've had my own experiences, and I understand you. Your report will be treated with respect and sensitivity. So I really appreciate all the comments, guys, so please keep them coming. So I have a question for you. Would you guys like me to talk about brief missing person stories from across the U.S. prior to the interview shows that I have planned for you? It's just a thought. I'm personally fascinated with these missing person stories, and I thought you might too. So if you want to hear some of them on the show, leave me a comment and let me know. And the ones I'm talking about are the one from David Paulides, you know of, and he's written amazing books. There's quite a few of them. I think Brother Bill has all of them. So I would be reading some of the brief, smaller stories that he has in there for you guys just before we get ready to talk about the interview or the shows that I do. So let me know in the comments. So we've got some fascinating shows coming your way this year, so be sure to hit that subscribe button right now. You'll be glad you did. And we hope that you've been enjoying and learning with these interviews from our classic Cryptid Bros shows now and the new, never heard before patron exclusive shows. Share our channel with your friends and listen while you work. You'll learn something and gain some knowledge on the strange reality that there is creatures among us, roaming freely across the U.S. and have for decades, if not centuries, and that our government has known about these for years and years, believe it or not. So tonight's show is quite frightening to say the least, guys. This next guest recalls that it was years ago while he was only 14 years old. I can't even imagine that. Both he and his father went on a father-son fishing outing during the month of August. He wasn't too interested in fishing that day, he states. He took off for a walking adventure along an old path that ventured off into the woods. And what he ran into while walking, he'll never forget as long as he lives, he says. He's never really told anyone outside of his family and close friends what happened that day. So listen in as he goes back to that day to retell of what happened that afternoon while he was only yards away from this terrifying creature that chased him.
Yeah, well, my name is William C. Barnes, and I'm an author, and I had a very up-close experience with a Sasquatch when I was 14 years old, and it's only now, 50 years later, that I'm actually able to tell the story without getting too emotional about it, because I've had a long time to process it. And as I told you before, I incorporated some of what I did learn after a lot of meditation, if you want to call it, and included it in my book, The Legend of Running Brook. But basically what happened was that I was 14 years old, and my parents wanted to go from Ohio to a place called Fontana Dam or Fontana Lake, which I think was built up during the Tennessee Valley Authority. I may or may not be right on that. And they had a dam, and the fishing was good, and my dad was an avid fisherman. So one day he and I pulled up into one of these secluded areas, and at one part of the area there, because I wasn't interested in fishing, there was like this old road. It was a asphalt road, and it had hadn't been used in years, and the reason I knew that is because there were big saplings growing out of the middle of it, and it was all crumbled. It still had the yellow paint on it, which I thought was interesting. And I would imagine now 50 years later that thing has just completely disappeared. But anyway, I started to walk down that road, and I was just kind of taking everything in. And about a half an hour into my walk, I smelled something terrible. I call it a wet dog wrapped in rotting fish. I stopped and was wondering where that was, and then it was almost like right in front of me, this thing materialized. And it's either that my eyes had to focus or whatever. It was broad daylight. I stood no more than 20 feet away from it, face on, looking at this thing. And then it seemed like it had two other friends. One was off to its right, behind some of the saplings, and the other one was a little farther down on his left, and again standing behind these saplings. And I had a good look at it for, I'm talking, 2 or 3 minutes. I mean, I wasn't afraid at that time. I was just like kind of in shock, if you want to call it there, a little bit, but not afraid, because I was seeing this thing, and I got to tell you, you know that guy, I think his name was Todd Standing.
Yes.
The pictures that he took of the face.
Yes, I do.
You know, I can tell you right now that guy is no fake, because what he took of those faces was exactly what I saw.
Oh,
and I'll remember. I'll take that to my grave. So anyway, I'm looking at it, and then the two Sasquatch who were behind him started to shake the saplings, and were kind of woofing. And the one that I was faced with, I kind of called him the boss. You know, that he was the one who confronted. He let out a howl, and that's all I can call it, that just about rumbled inside my body. But of course, I was only 20 feet away from him. And then he raised his hands and fists, and I thought, oh my God, what's going on? And that's when I felt fearful. And I admit, I peed my pants. You know, and I was still like stunned. I couldn't move. And then he kind of moved towards me. That's when all of a sudden I started running. And I'll tell you that, you know, an Olympic athlete didn't have anything over me at that time. But he was chasing me.
Oh, he was?
He stayed. Yeah, he started chasing me. Now, I realize now, as an older man, that if he wanted to catch me, he would have caught me. There's just no question about it. I started just running, and he was kind of like 5 or 6 feet behind me, just kind of loping along. I'm running, and he's just like, you know, bouncing, you know. I don't know how else to put it. So I saw my dad up ahead finally after what seemed like ages of running, and I just said, Dad, it's after me. And he must have thought that it was a bear, so he took all his fishing equipment while I was still running to the car, and he threw it into the trunk, and I got into the passenger side, and I got in between the front seat and the back seat on the floor, and I was just sobbing by this point. And my father said, I don't know what you saw, but I'm getting the hell out of here. And we left. I didn't get out from between the seats of the benches there until we had been driving for, about 5 minutes. And then when I got home, well, actually, we had rented a cabin. My mother and my sister were there. That's when I told them what happened, and my mother just grilled me and grilled me. My dad, who generally didn't stick up for me that much, said, "My God, Ann, he pissed his pants,
Right.
Something had to scare him." So, then I got settled down enough to have a little dinner, but to hardly keep it down. I was so upset. And then she turned on the radio, and the radio was talking about residents of Fontana to look out for the Fontana wild man. I looked at my mom and I said, "That's what I saw." And I mean, I got a good look at him. He didn't have fur. He had hair, actual hair, not fur.
When you saw what type of color of hair and what in your mind sticks out when you were seeing him, any particular features aside from this first time encounter that was very, I imagine, extremely frightening? Is there any features that struck out to you, as in the face, the eyes, the teeth, the nose, or anything that you can recall?
Well, the face is almost human. And for all practical purposes, if you were to take a quick look rather than a long look like I had, you would have thought that you were looking at a big, tall, hairy human being. Now, he was black, but he had like striations of tan in his fur. So it's kind of like black with tan sprinkled in there. The ones behind him were both brown, very dark brown. And he had, his head was 2.5 times bigger than mine. It was kind of sunk down, like into his chest. It's like his chin, if he turned his head, his chin would have hit his shoulder. It's not like us. We can turn our head and look over the shoulder. He couldn't.
Wow.
He would have probably had to move his whole body like that. What is that, Patterson-Gimlin film?
Yes. It didn't have a neck. It just kind of head set on the shoulders.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And it was obvious that he was a male. The right accoutrements were there.
Right.
So,
and he was in front.
And he was in front. I was standing 20 feet from him.
Oh my gosh!
This is open.
That is incredible.
And so I remember that the next day when I woke up, I was absolutely sore throughout my whole body, and my dad told me that was the result of the adrenaline that I was pumping.
That's correct. And how old were you at that time?
I was 14. So I was, still at that time, in our history, I was still an innocent little kid. I don't know how innocent a 14-year-old is now, but I was still learning a lot about the world and everything else. But what I wanted to tell you was that the bed in the cabin was right next to a window, and I went to go to sleep. I couldn't sleep, and then I started thinking, what if that thing caught my scent and is looking for me and it'll grab me out through the window? So what I did for the rest of the time that we were in the cabin was I slipped on the floor because I figured I didn't want this thing coming in and grabbing at me. I was that scared, and I really, we had 3 days left in the cabin, and I refused to go out. I was not going to go out in the woods, even in sight of the cabin. I was just so sure that he got my scent and he was looking for me.
Oh, I can't blame you for that, though.
I cannot blame you for that at 14.
Yeah. And I really didn't sleep well, and it wasn't until we were out of the park coming back to Ohio that I was able to put my head back and fall asleep, and I slept through a lot of the ride back. Occasionally, I still have nightmares. In some of them, I get caught, and in others, I'm just reliving the experience, and I'll still wake up in a cold sweat from it, So it was, I don't know how many people have had the same experience I did, but I stood there and looked at him for a good, in my own estimation, and I may be wrong, it may have been longer, it may have been shorter, but I stood there and looked at him for a good 3 to 5 minutes.
Wow.
So it wasn't like...
That's a long time.
This was just a fleeting thing,
Right.
He was twice as tall as I was. I was probably, 5'3" or 4" at that time because, you're still growing. He was twice as big. The chest on this thing was incredible. He looked like he had this big barrel around his torso, and then it kind of tapered a little bit down to these legs, and his upper leg was longer than his lower leg, and his arms went down to his knees a little bit longer, and he didn't have hair on his hands, but you could see muscles even in the hands. So this guy was, he made a hell of a linebacker,
Right. And there were 2 others, you say, behind him in these sapling.
Yeah, that's right. And they started shaking the trees first. I think they were saying, "This is enough, get out."
Were they smaller than him?
Were they? Gee, I remember I was thinking so much about looking at him that I'd have to say that they were probably a little shorter than him. If I think about it. But like I said, I kind of got the idea that this guy was the boss.
The alpha, yeah.
Yeah, and like the alpha male or something like that, and he confronted it. So, and like I said, now I realize now at 64 that if he wanted to catch me, he would have caught me, as fast as I was running there as a youth. But yeah, so that's basically my experience. I'm probably very lucky in one chance that I didn't just get a fleeting view of one, that I actually saw the whole thing, the whole body and his head. Oh, and I remember that he didn't have any canines in his mouth. He had teeth like ours.
That are kind of square and flat?
Yeah, when he, that's, so I think that he is, I think that Sasquatch, after doing some research on this, I think that Sasquatch is probably a generalist when he's eating. He'll eat just about anything, meat, plants, because if he had the canines, then he would have been probably, a meat eater, but no, when he opened his mouth, and my God, he had the Grand Canyon there in his, when he opened up his mouth, his lips are a little bit longer proportionally than ours, and very thin lips. And he didn't have a protruding, front muzzle or anything else. Like I said, if I had looked at him first, I would have thought that this was a guy, you know, in a monkey suit. But you know, they don't make 10-foot monkey suits.
No, and even if they did, I don't think they'd find anybody to wear it properly. So it sounds like from the teeth, you're saying he was more of a omnivore, both plant and meat eating, kind of like we are designed. A couple things, if you don't mind, some questions. Now, when you saw this, how far were you away from your family? Was it just your dad, or your dad and mom?
Yeah, I was a good 3/4 of a mile away from my dad.
And there were trees all around you?
Yeah, there were trees. Like I said, it was an old road. It must have been a side road used at one time. And it was asphalt, and there were these saplings and plants and everything else growing through it. And like I said, now probably 50 years later, you wouldn't even find the asphalt there. You know, it probably just has grown up. But the saplings themselves were about as tall as me, maybe 6-7 feet tall, something like that. And they were probably as thick as my forearm. So, and I remember stopping and looking at them, and I was thinking to myself at the time that, boy, you give nature a chance to take over, and it just runs with it. You know? So, which was interesting that a 14-year-old would think that. I don't think he would have. I don't think I would have thought of that. So it's kind of interesting, you know.
In what time of the year? It sounds like the summer, but what month? Out of curiosity.
Oh, I remember it was August, because we always took our vacations in August. My dad would take off, because August is kind of like the hot month of the year in Ohio, where you get a lot of rain, and so we usually took the vacations then to kind of get away from some of it.
When you were walking and you came upon this Bigfoot, or the few Bigfoot here, I mean, we don't know if it was a family or not, or just kind of a party scouting around, or whatever their organization. Were you, out of curiosity, do you remember you were just walking, or were you whistling, or singing, or humming, or just kind of...
No, I was walking, and I was just quiet. You know, I was just taking everything in. I mean, it's a beautiful forest. It's a beautiful forest, and I remember remarking to myself that I didn't see any dead trees, you know, because it was like there was the road, and then a couple 100 feet off from where the road was where the big trees started. You know, the rest of it was like little saplings growing up around it, but it's like there was an actual tree line, you know. So I'd have to draw you a picture to kind of give you an idea of the landscape, I think. Like I said, and I don't know if it was because my eyes were adjusting or that, but it almost seemed like the thing just integrated itself in front of me. And then I saw the other two, and for the life of me, I don't know why I wasn't scared then. I think it was more like, what am I looking at? And just looked at it, and it wasn't until the other two started shaking the trees and hooting, and this one let out a yell. That's when I realized that, you know, I better get the heck out of there, you know.
Right. I think that happens a lot of the time, Bill, because what you just said, initially people are not fearful because their brain is still trying to wrap the cognitive aspect of what they're trying to relate it to in their past experiences. And their brain is is that a man? Is that not a man? No, that can't be a man. He's too big. Well, why does he have hair on him? And all these questions are just turning a million miles an hour in your head. So the emotion of fear is not there yet, because now you're asking a lot of questions to yourself until you realize that, wait a minute, I still don't know what this is, but now I know this is not a man. And then the fear kicks in, whether it be after a moment or two, a minute, or if it has a very, very loud yell, or it's angry, or it bares its teeth in an aggressive way, or it shakes some of the foliage area, and then you realize, okay, now I'm in fear. That's a long time. That's a long time to get a visual that close. That's a rarity in most cases.
Yeah, so like I said, that if anybody has any doubts about what Todd Standing is doing, believe him. I saw it. I know. I will take this to my grave. I know that there is such a thing as a Bigfoot. And when I watch TV and I hear some of these skeptics going on about it, I mean, I almost want to laugh at them. I think, you idiot, You've got so many people who have seen it and reported it, and they can communicate with it now with tree knocks and everything else, and the sightings and the pictures are getting clearer and clearer, and yet, we have to have a body. Well, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think that there are that many of them. There's probably maybe 10,000 of them scattered throughout the country. And that's just my opinion. I have really no idea how many there are, but I think they're an endangered species, and I think that they should be treated as that. And this idea that we want to have a body and somebody shoot the thing, and the thing is so human-like that I feel like you would be killing a man if you shot one.
Yeah, that's a big debate right now in that community of the people that have had sightings or encounters and, shoot, don't shoot. And I guess our opinion is that, we want to observe more than anything and try to understand, but these, I guess you can call kind of a hominoid or a relic hominoid, is that we still don't understand it. And so it makes sense that being a creature that resembles a Homo sapien, a human, they might have different personalities. Some may have genetic alterations or tendencies in their personality that could make them aggressive. Or say you come upon a clan or a somewhat of a family unit that they have little ones and they may act aggressive toward you. And I guess my feeling is that, our feeling is that we'll back out of an area, but if your life feels threatened, as you said, these things have no problem in being able to catch you and tear your arms and legs off and beat you with your arms and legs to death, So, our feeling is that unless they get aggressive, we leave them alone. We're not out to intentionally hunt them or harm them. But if they turn, and as Wiley Dave would say, if they do the funky monkey and they get crazy on us, then we have to protect ourselves.
Well, yeah, I agree with that. I'd probably, I would defend myself too. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But in general, I'd say that if we leave them alone, they'll leave us alone. They obviously don't want to have that much to do with us. And I really, one of the things in this book that I wrote, The Legend of Running Brook, was that I refer to them as the Watchers. And that's based on my experience, because I think that what they do is that they stand out there and watch. And I've heard the term day watcher, you know, so that they may be nocturnal, but during the day there's one that's out there looking around to make sure that the other ones aren't going to be disturbed by another animal or possibly a human.
Well, no, I've heard that too.
Makes sense to me.
I'm going to say I've heard that too. The day watchers or night watchers, and I've heard it said this way, that typically because they inhabit areas that are remote and that are relatively left alone and quiet, very little people traffic, but plenty of game and food in where they're at, that when people come into an area, we're kind of like entertainment for them. So when people build campfires or they hear voices or campfire songs or smells that are a lot different than what they're typically used to, then, you know, you're curious and you want to go check people out and you want to see and observe from sometimes close up and sometimes far away. We think that if they want to be seen, they'll let you see them. There are occasions where I'm not saying that people can have a happenstance moment where they're walking quiet and come up on one. That's happened before in many cases. But I would say for the most part, they know you're in the woods. Even the best hunters, deer hunters, in camo have been spotted by these creatures. So they're just masters of their environment. They blend, they mesh in, and they blend so well, I think that we've talked about this often with the group of brothers and Wiley, is that they blend in so well. They use every limb and tree. They blend so well into backdrops, foregrounds, ground cover, that you could be 15 feet away, and unless you smell them, you would know they're there. And that's kind of the scary part. They'll let you know if you're too close, or if they're probably in just an inquisitive mode and they're not in an area to protect anything, they'll let you walk right by. That's just my feeling. I can't prove that, but no one can disprove that either. So it's just that's just my feeling. If I was going to be inquisitive and I wanted to learn and look and see about humans, there would be moments where I would creep up in the camp. I could do broad day. I can do at night when these humans go to sleep and they're snoring in their camps, in their tents. And I would look in windows. I would there's all just that's the way I would be. I would smells and sounds would be different. So from what I'm used to, so I would tend to come into campsites and not be seen. So. Out of curiosity, Bill, I'm curious, after your dad immediately saw how shook up you were, you got in on the floorboard, and you left, what did your dad, did he believe you eventually? Did your mom believe you? What was the final outcome of their belief or understanding what had happened to you in the end?
Well, we took off in the car because I think my dad thought that I was being chased by a bear.
Oh, I see.
And so, and I got him in, like I said, I got in the car and huddled on the floor between the front and the back seats. All I remember him saying is, "Don't worry, Bill, we're getting the hell out of here." And then when I got back to the cabin, that's when I told them about this. My mother, like I said, she grilled me. Well, are you sure you didn't see a bear? Are you sure you did this? Are you sure you did that? And I stuck to what I had experienced. I didn't waver. And like I said, my dad said, well, look, he peed his pants, so there's got to be something that scared him, And then when they had that announcement on the radio while we were having dinner, that kind of, I remember my mother looked at me and she didn't say anything, but I could see that she was, impressed that had happened. I really don't know what she was thinking. And then the next day, when my muscles were hurting and my whole body just hurt, and my dad said, "Well, that was the adrenaline." And then he said to my mom, "Well, see, he must have seen something, because when your body has that much adrenaline, it kicks in and it actually hurts, as it's." Because he told me he was an ex-Marine, and he had told me that there were what was one time when he was on, what was it, Paraguay, that something happened and they had to get the heck out of where they were, and they just started running, under fire, and that the next day everybody kind of hurt, but that was, then, and they were told, well, it was a result of the adrenaline. So he had experienced that himself.
I see.
So I think as far as my parents were concerned, I saw something, but they weren't going to say, "Oh yeah, you saw, Bigfoot," or anything like that. And I've talked about this with friends. I even put it on the blog of my website. I got emails even from my friends who said, "Bill, are you sure that this is what you saw? And are you sure it wasn't this? Are you sure it wasn't that?" I was surfing things on Bigfoot on YouTube, and I came across your show where you were interviewing this man who had 3 different occasions, and I guess one occasion it was taking his livestock, and then I thought to myself, this guy will listen to me. So that's why I called you. I figured you would listen to me and you would understand.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I just had this conversation with the gentleman a couple days ago who has been an avid coon hunter for 35 plus years in the Appalachia area. And he just said that he's had multiple encounters, and he knows the woods forward, backwards, and upside down of all those hollers and trees he's been in with his dogs for years and years. And with the experiences, he just said, Lance, who do you call? We don't have anyone really to call besides you on these YouTube channels, because no crime was committed. What are you going to say to a police officer? What are you going to say honestly to a game ranger? They're good people, and they do good conservation work for our natural resources and game, but still I don't feel like calling them, because they're going to think that I know what they're going to say. They're going to say, "Oh, you saw a bear." And then they may call other people that I don't want to talk to and visit me. So there's really not anybody that can, aside from these shows, say, "Hey, not only do I believe you, but I totally understand because we saw one too." So it's a very for the people that come forward and have courage enough to call, such as yourself and others, and there's a lot of people that call. There's still, in my opinion, and in our opinion as a group, still hundreds, if not thousands, of people that have seen and have had very, very terrifying encounters that will never, ever come forward because they don't know who to contact, or they just don't want to talk about it because they just don't want to bring that memory up again. It was so traumatizing.
Yeah, well, there's also the question of, you go to talk to a policeman or a game warden, and what can they really do about it? There's nothing. You had the experience.
That's right.
And, there's nothing that they can do, so I think that they just figure, well, we'll just try and mollify this person and tell them, well, you probably saw a bear or something like that. Don't worry about it, Because, you can't tell me that game warden in these preserves are not seeing these things too.
No, they do. They do, definitely. And like I tell people, what happens is that they may tell you what you saw was a bear and just brush it off and say, well, I think you just, I know you're a little excited and your boy was just a little excited and he probably saw a bear. And they may brush it off as if, no big deal. But in my opinion, what they do shortly after is they do report it internally. They do report it internally, but to you, in front of you, with their demeanor, they will brush it off as to not cause any type of excitement when they hear it.
Yeah, well, I can tell you that a bear doesn't follow you for, I don't know how long he followed me, to tell you the truth. But a bear doesn't follow you the distance that this thing did on 2 feet.
I was going to ask you about that. Now you were running, like you said, Olympian didn't have anything on you at that time during that run. Was this thing, did you turn your head to look back and see what was going on, or was it just something that you heard auditory-wise, or how did you see all of them coming after you, or just that one alpha male?
It was just the one alpha male that was coming after me, and I could hear him. At first, I could hear him grunting. I looked behind once, and I saw him, and that's when I realized that, gee, he's really close to me. I mean, he could have reached out and got me. I mean, that's how close that he was with those long arms.
Jeez.
And then it's like, you know how you can feel without seeing somebody, you can feel a presence sometimes.
Yes, absolutely. I know what you're talking about.
Well, at a certain point, I didn't feel that he was there, and I looked back, and he was absolutely gone. I mean, just gone. But I kept running because I was afraid he was going to come back after me, that he was just circling around or something. And like I said, I mean, I was just terrified, I was thinking, I'm never going to see my mom and dad again, and all the things that go through your mind, when you're afraid,
Oh,
and,
sure.
They talk about fight or flight. Well, I flew.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, just at that age, we've had some unfortunate encounter stories of individuals that had an early. I just got off a few days ago from a gentleman that his boy is 17 and had an encounter. Saw very close these dogman creatures, and it's bothering him still to this day. And when it happens at an early age, it's very, very impressionable. We've had adults that you've heard, I'm sure, on some of these shows that have an encounter at 40, 50, 60 years of age, and they're extremely shook up. So for a child that, we watch movies of Hollywood, the great thing, that we used to watch these movies is that when the movie ends, a part of your mind says, thank goodness these aren't real. But when you see these creatures, you realize, wait a minute, these things are real. There are monsters. And and that's the part that hits you really hard, a part of it as a kid, that these are real, and that's why they don't want to go back out in the woods. And even some adults that
I haven't really ventured too far. Last September, I think it was September, we went to one of these psychic Sasquatch conventions. It was up in Shuela in Washington State, and I wasn't impressed, to tell you the truth, because they're talking about all this esoteric stuff about a Sasquatch with such and such a name, communicating with them and giving them advice on how to live life in the world. Now, it may very well be true that this is happening. But when I look at that in my own experience, you know, and then going over this for 50 years, and I mean, there's not a day or a week that I still don't think about this, because it just so impressed me. But when we had gone, you know, to Washington for this this talk, that was really the first time that I was in a forest for 50 years or something like that. I just stayed away. I became a complete city dweller, and you know, I just didn't want to go out into nature because I was afraid what I was going to see, and I'm not as young or as agile as I used to be. I'm overweight, and you know, if I got chased again, you know, I wouldn't make it.
Well, I think nobody can blame you at all, honestly, Bill, for something that you had such an up-close and personal encounter. I personally can't imagine. I didn't have anything like that. I had a shadow type of figure in some saplings when I was at in a garden working one evening, and it scared me. And I mean, it wasn't up close like yours, so with you seeing the detail that you saw, and not only seeing one but others, and having it chase you, I mean, that is an ultimate level of fear that you know, at 14, that'll have a lifelong impression on you. So I definitely don't blame you at all for not wanting to go out. There's plenty of big, strapping, tough guys that don't hunt anymore because of experiences they had in the woods, and nowhere near as up close and detailed as yours. So I'm really thankful that you called and to share this, because, you know, I hear the same thing. People say, oh, these things aren't real. They're just a misidentification of a bear that's upright and curious. Well, people understand, I think, in general, even city dwellers, they see enough of Discovery Channel and wildlife channels to know what a bear looks like. A brown bear, a grizzly bear, a black bear. I mean, come on. And so when you are trying to process this up-close encounter, wait a minute, that's not a guy. It's too big. Why does he have hair? There's 3 of them. What are they doing out here? And
yeah, why does his face look like a human?
Exactly.
The only thing that I would say that kind of took away from it was that he had this broad nose that stretched out to just underneath his eyes. You know, the bottom part of the nose. So, you know, he. But other than that, I mean, it looked human. He did have that brow ridge, but that almost looked like that was hair rather than a brow ridge. I don't know.
Was he black in the places that he didn't have hair? Was it a black skin, or was it a lighter skin?
Oh, he had a lighter skin that was kind of mottled. It almost looked like he had freckles. That he had a light skin, and then he would have like these brown freckles. I think of.
Did you say brown?
One of the
brown freckles. Oh, okay. I couldn't hear you very well.
Yeah, if you look at one of the photos that Todd Standing took, where you get a really clear view of the face, and you can see like modeling around it. You know, it wasn't exactly the same color all around. That's how I would describe it. And of course, like I said, he had black fur, or black hair rather, and he had streaks of brown in it. So,
And his face was also patches where there was no hair, I take it, from what I gather.
From around the forehead, around the face and the eyes, and to the bottom part of his lips, there was no hair. So it's like you saw the full face, and that was clear. But the rest of him was his chin and everything else was all covered in hair. So that's what made this so surprising to me. I think is because I was wondering if I was looking at a man, and then it's
right.
Like, no, this is too big to be a man, and well, what an experience.
I can't thank you enough for sharing with us, and if there was any parting words that you would tell anyone that's believers, knowers, or non-believers, just what's your final thoughts on the event that transpired when you were 14, and what kind of thoughts or feelings do you have today about what you saw?
Well, one is don't doubt what you see, because they exist. It's a fact. So-called scientists are not really looking at this, as far as I'm concerned, in a scientific method. There's enough empirical data just with the foot tracks, and they talk about the mid-tarsal break, which humans don't have. Believe what you saw, and see if you can take anything away from the experience that would be positive for you, rather than to live in fear. And it's easy for me to say, but I still have my own moments. So I think, in a nutshell, that's what I would say.
That's good words of advice for sure. Good words of advice, and I can't thank you enough for calling in and allowing me to speak with you. And it's very rare that someone, again, especially at the age that you were, be only 20 feet away for that long of an experience. Most people, it's kind of a fleeting moment, and they're just remembering bits and pieces. But to stand there and soak in the detail, let alone having this thing follow you, that's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
So we'll keep in contact if you don't mind. I like to keep in contact.
Oh, I don't mind at all. And
could you give for us your website again and your book?
Yeah. It is William C. Barnes, BARNES .com. I wrote a book concerning Titanic. That was one of my first books. So it has a Titanic theme on it, but you can go into the bookstore. You can see where I have the book, The Legend of Running Brook, and it's actually in two parts. It's called Heyoka and then Redemption. And I got very good reviews from the Native American Indians on following it, and one of them told me, for a white guy, you got us. So,
well, that's a lot.
Yeah. So, and it does involve, especially, in the interaction with the more mythical or the Native American legends as far as Bigfoot. And that's part of the story. But I think that people would take an interest in how the Native Americans look at their relationship with Bigfoot. And like I said, it's a coming-of-age story, and I think people would like that too.
I'm sure. It sounds interesting. I look forward on getting the book. And so I just wanted to let people know kind of what that was and how they could get in contact with you. So,
Yeah, they can get in contact with me, and email me. I have a email address that they can email me at.
Bill, thank you again so much, and I will text you, and we'll chat. I like to follow up with people just to see how they're doing and how things are going every once in a while.
All right, then. Take care.
Okay, you too. Bye.
Bye-bye.